On behalf of the Louisiana Center for the Book in the State Library of Louisiana, thank you for joining us for this virtual 2021 Louisiana Book Festival presentation. This program is When Bad Things Happen, Find Your Superpower with Nancy Rust and Carol Stubbs. Nancy Rust is passionate about books and believes well-chosen words can empower young people and make the world a better place. After nearly 3 decades of teaching reading, writing, and literature, she sat down with her computer and began her career as an author. She and Carol Stubbs have written 5 books together. You can catch up with them on their Facebook page, Nancy and Carol Books, or learn more about their books at nancycarolbooks.com. Carol Stubbs grew up with a love of reading and writing that was encouraged by her family. Her writing career has included being a journalist, freelance writer, English teacher, and author. She is also a potter and enjoys creating designs inspired by Louisiana swamps and bayous. She has co-written 5 books with Nancy Rust. You can find out more on their Facebook page, Nancy and Carol Books, or learn more about their books at nancycarolbooks.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Rust and Carol Stubbs.
Everyone, I'm Carol Stubbs, and I'm here with my co-writer, Nancy Rust. Hi. And we have been writing books together for 10 years now. We have 5 published books, and 4 of them are for children. And so you'll see on the screen that we have 2 that we're going to talk about today. One book is called The Rose Without a Name, and it's the story of the Katrina Rose. The other one is called Andrew Higgins and the Boats That Landed Victory in World War II.
Now, those 2 books look really different. The Rose Without a Name has this pretty picture of a rose and a bee. And then when you look at the Andrew Higgins book, you will see that it's actually took place quite a long time ago in World War II. You will see that there are soldiers in the background. But they have one thing in common, and that is that both of these books have heroes that were able to find their extraordinary or superpowers when things were bad. So today, our talk is going to be When Bad Things Happen, Find Your Superpowers. Now, superpowers are something that we need to kind of stop and talk about. Carol, I think you have a favorite definition.
I'm going to put that up. So the definition that we've been using is a superpower is a skill, a personal trait, or passion that plays an important role in your life, helps you do good in the world, and or makes you feel special, happy, and confident. And so it's something that we all want, and it's something we all have. We just have to find it.
And you know, before we begin, we probably should stop and talk about 2 people who have superpowers who are not with us today, but they are very important in our
Yes.
presentation. One of them is Brock Nicole, who did the,
and I'll put this back up so you can see the covers.
Yeah, Brock Nicole did all of the art in the Andrew Higgins book. And the other one is
The Rose Without a Name with Melissa Vandiver, and she did all the art of The Rose Without a Name, where she had to capture the beauty of Louisiana. And so we have 2 very, very different artists and renditions.
And you're going to be seeing their superpowers as we go through the presentation, because we are showing their art in the original form rather than actually in the book. So we will read to you sometimes the pages in the book, what it says, while you will be seeing the original art on your screen.
Okay, so we're going to start with The Rose Without a Name, and I'm going to read a little bit to you about the book. Just to tell you a little bit first before we get into it, the main character in the book is a rose. And so it's a story that we wrote that's based on a true story, but it's actually, we wrote it in the form of a fantasy. So you'll see the rose has feelings. It's going to be like a character in the book. So I'm going to start by reading the first pages to set up the story. And it says, I'm reading from the book, Like children, roses have names, and here you see some of the names. So some roses have royal names.
And there's Queen Elizabeth with a royal name.
Or some are named for famous people.
Mr. Lincoln, which is Abraham Lincoln.
And then we have some with fanciful names, kind of fun names like Lavender Pinocchio, or the fairy, or a mermaid. And so now we're going to see what these roses have to do with our character. So I'll read from the book again, and here you just see the picture. 400 roses once grew in Peggy Martin's garden beside a bayou in Louisiana. All the roses had names, except the rambler rose that grew beside the shed. That rose wanted a name too. I am not royal or famous or fanciful, thought the rose. How will I get a name? So there you see the start of the story, that we have a rose in a garden that has a problem. How do you think that rose felt?
Well, I think that anytime that any of us find ourselves around other people who have, and everyone else has something that we don't have, it makes us feel bad, maybe kind of left out or different or sad. And I suspect that's how the rose felt too.
I would think so. And I don't think the rose felt at this time that it had any kind of superpower. It was, when it first came to the garden, it was alone. It had no name. And all the other roses had names and knew what they were doing in the garden. So the rose has to think about that. What is the rose going to do about that? What do you think the rose could do? What are some thoughts about?
Well, the rose could, maybe the rose could cry and somebody would feel sorry for it and it would get a name.
Or it could throw a tantrum.
Or maybe beg Peggy Martin, please give me a name.
Maybe those things. But now we're going to see that the rose actually didn't do any of those things. The rose did the only thing that a rose can really do. And so here we see what it did. It put down roots in the ground, and it grew green stems and leaves. And so you see the little garden creatures coming along to encourage it as it grows. We had the worm, we had the frog, and now we have a dragonfly, seeing the green leaves. And then as the seasons go on, the rose continues to grow, and eventually it blooms and has beautiful pink flowers all over it, as you saw it in the first garden picture. And the bee notices the flowers and encourages the rose to keep growing. And
well, encouragement really is a superpower, Carol.
it is.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's one
and
of the
we see
best
that.
superpowers that people can have, where they're kind to other people. And so maybe the bee and the dragonfly and the worm and the frog, when they were saying all these encouraging things to the rose, you know, they knew they were being kind, and it was helpful to the rose.
It was very helpful to the rose, and I think it grew stronger because of that. But then, as in life, things change. And so here we have a picture of the change that came in the garden. What do you see there? So you can kind of see on the right-hand side, there looks like a storm coming up. And so I'm going to read you the words in the book. Then one dreadful summer day, everything changed. Hurricane Katrina roared across the ocean toward land. Thunder crashed, lightning flashed. So what is happening here? For those of you in this area, you know exactly what's happening. A hurricane is coming. Hurricane Katrina was one of those big and powerful storms that we have, that you may have heard of, or you may know somebody that lived through Hurricane Katrina. And we've had some recent big storms.
Right. We had last year, we had Laura that hit Lake Charles. That was another devastating hurricane. And then recently we had Ida, which has put we're still feeling the effects of Ida. And I guess actually everything hasn't even been repaired from Laura yet.
Right. So storms are very dangerous and people take them seriously. Let's see what happens in the garden. The dragonflies felt danger and flew away. The earthworms burrowed deep into the soil. The frogs hopped into the bayou, and bees rushed back to their hive.
So all of them tried to escape. They went someplace where they felt that they were safe. And the same thing happens with people. I mean, sometimes people evacuate, they leave.
They leave and go to safer ground. Other people gather up supplies and stay. It just depends on the storm and where it is. But Hurricane Katrina, the storm doesn't wait. So the animals got out of the way. But what about the roses?
Well, the rose couldn't leave.
They can't leave. They're there. The garden stays there. And so we see in the other picture that the water is rising. Katrina was a storm that brought lots and lots of water. And so we see it rising. So it's about to cover the shed and the rose clinging to the side of the shed. Remember, this is based on a true story. So this really happened with the storm coming over to the garden, and the water actually covered the shed and tore through the garden. So it tore leaves off the trees. It tore the leaves off the roses. But eventually, the storm goes away. And usually it's about a 24-hour period or something. But when the storm is gone, this storm in particular, Katrina, left water, covering the shed. It took a few weeks for that water to go away. And then what was left? The garden was destroyed. And the rose, you see it there by the shed. It doesn't look very good, but it was there and it was all alone. So imagine what the rose feels now.
Where the rose is the only of the 400 roses in the garden, the only rose to survive was this particular rose. And so the rose obviously had to have this superpower of endurance to just endure through the storm.
It endured the storm.
Yeah, and all of the 2 weeks, I think, of water.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was a miracle, and people took it that way. And the rose must have been feeling it didn't see it that way at all right now. The rose is just alone and sad, and all around it is nothing but devastation, brown and bare ground. And just, why would you want to grow? But what does the rose do? Let's see.
Well, I think, when somebody has this superpower to come back, it's resilience.
This one, yeah. So the rose continued to grow. So the friends again come and encourage it. The worm comes up and says, look, your roots are still strong. There's some green and your roots are strong. The frog encourages it by saying how good your leaves look. And all their little comments make the rose feel better. Then the dragonflies return. And when they return to the garden, they see that there are leaves all over the rose. And they're so excited and they're so happy. Imagine what they feel like. They've been flying around seeing all the devastation, and they see some green. And so what do they do? What do you do when you are excited about something?
I tell everybody.
Go tell people. Yes, you're so happy about it. So you tell the story. And that's what they did. They went to tell the story of this rose that survived Hurricane Katrina. And the rose, the story was passed around over and over again, and it helped people and encouraged people to rebuild in their area and to make their garden grow again and to build their house up, because the rose can do it, we can do it. And they all started calling the rose the Peggy Martin rose because it was from Peggy Martin's garden. And so that is the name of the rose today. It's called the Peggy Martin rose. And this little rose just endured and was resilient and hung on and did what a rose is supposed to do. And it helped so many people, and it continues to help people today with that one superpower that makes people feel better and makes the world better, made its world totally better. So now we're going to hear about Andrew Higgins and how he might have helped the world in a different way.
We're going to actually begin with Andrew in his childhood, just as we began with the rose before the catastrophe of Hurricane Katrina hit. So we're going to begin with looking at the pictures. And as you look at this picture, I am going to read to you the words that you would see if you had the book. Andrew liked challenges. And he loved boats, especially fast boats. Andrew Higgins was born in 1886 in Columbus, Nebraska. He was the youngest of 10 children. His father died when he was 7, and his mother moved the family to Omaha. His home was near a lake.
Okay, and look at, again, these illustrations are by Brock Nicole, who did an amazing job.
And here we have Andrew beginning with his first boat. He built his first boat when he was 12. He spotted a wrecked sailboat in the lake and pulled it to shore. And so right away we see Andrew is using his imagination, his observation powers. He sees a boat and he pulls it to shore and he thinks, maybe I can build a boat from it. And so he measured, he sawed, he leveled, he sanded and painted. He worked and worked and worked. At last, the boat was ready to sail. He named the boat Patience because he had needed so much patience when he worked on it. And then remember, Andrew loves fast boats, so he expected Patience to zoom across the water. However, Patience was too slow.
Way too slow, yes. But so Andrew Higgins wanted that speed. So let's see. Here's a faster one.
Yes, so he decided to build an ice boat. And so you can imagine that if the boat were on ice, it would seem as though it would sail faster. So Andrew built this boat in his basement, and I'm going to read to you the words that you would see if this were in the book. He built this boat in his basement and named her Annie O to honor his mother, but Annie O was too big to take out the door. So we see that he did get it out the door. Now, I bet you cannot imagine how he got it out the door.
Well, it was a challenge for him, and he loved challenges. So
he waited. I'm going to read the next page. He waited until his mother went shopping. After she left, he and his friends tore down part of the basement wall and took the boat out through the hole. They had put most of the wall back before she got home.
Don't try this at home.
Okay, our book tells you some more about his early life, but we're going to move on through the story until we get to this picture here. You'll see that it is called A.J. Higgins. That is for Andrew Jackson Higgins, Lumber and Export Company. And here are the words that are on that page. He moved to the South. At first, he lived in Alabama. Then he moved to New Orleans. It was a city near water and trees. It was exactly what Andrew wanted. He opened a lumber business. Now, what do you have to have with a lumber business?
I think you need to be around trees.
And there are trees.
There are trees
near New Orleans. And at this particular time, especially, most of the lumbering business was being done in the swamps with the cypress trees
at that time.
Yes, and I'll read you another page from the book that we don't actually have the picture of this. Cypress trees grew in the swamps near New Orleans. Cutting the trees was easy, but getting them to the lumber mill was hard. Boats hauled the trees out of swamps. The shallow water caused problems. Sometimes boats got stuck on sandbars. Sometimes they bumped into logs, and they moved very, very slowly.
Another challenge for Andrew Higgins.
And so we know enough about Andrew Higgins now to know that probably what he's going to do is try to solve this problem himself, and he did. So he decided that the world needed a better boat, and he was the person to do it.
So it also seems to be developing his superpower now, because he starts observing how he can do this, how he can make the boats faster and better, and looks at things all around him to get ideas.
Right. He examined the Cajun pirogue, which has a flat bottom.
He used that. He used the birds in the swamp, the roseate spoonbill with its funny little bill, and
which has to be able to move fast through the water to catch fish. He looked at the whale.
The way the whales moved in the ocean. Yeah, he went all the way to the ocean and studied things.
Yes, and he even went across the ocean to Holland. Yes, and looked at the tunnel boat that was used there, which makes a little bit of an air a tunnel that will let the air flow under the boat so that it moves more quickly. And Andrew switched his business from lumber, and his main business became boat building. Well, you can imagine that if he has this fast boat and it is so efficient and doing so well, what happens when somebody does something really good?
Everybody wants it.
Everybody wants it. So everybody began wanting Andrew's boats. But then, as with the Rose, something changed.
One day, not one day, but built up for a time. But then this was a world event. So
Yes, then World War II started. Andrew was, and I'm going to read to you from this page. And while I read to you from this page, I want you to look at the picture that's there. You see all the soldiers in the landing boats. And then that is the side of a ship that you see in the background. And a Jeep is being lowered into one of those boats. And just look at the picture while I read. Then World War II began. Andrew was making the best landing boats in the world. They were called Higgins Boats. The boats were just what the Allies needed. They needed boats to carry the soldiers from the big ships to the shore. They needed boats to land tanks. They needed thousands and thousands of Higgins boats, and they needed them fast.
just what Andrew could do.
So then Andrew begins to concentrate on building as many boats as he can, as quickly as he can. And what you see here is an amazing picture, because prior to World War II, most women, many women did not work outside of their homes. They stayed at home, did housework, took care of the children. But when World War II came, things changed all over the country.
Well, the men were drafted, so every eligible man was sent to war. So that left a lot of jobs in need of people to, for one, to build ships and tanks and equipment for the war effort. So everything changed. It was a huge change in our nation.
And so I'm going to read you the next page. And this is actually one of my very favorite pages, because it tells us so much about Andrew Higgins and his character. What, in addition to being a very imaginative person and having great powers of observation, he was a sensitive person with a lot of empathy. And so I'll read you that page. Andrew hired many, many workers. He hired women and men of all races. He was a good employer. He started a child care center and opened a free clinic. And so today we have lots of daycare centers where children can go when their mothers are working. But at that time, this was a new concept.
It was.
Yeah, so by starting the child care center, he was helping the moms not have to worry about their children while they were working. And this is my favorite sentence, just about. Unlike many companies at that time, Higgins Industries gave workers equal pay for equal work. So everyone was treated completely fairly. And not only did Andrew look at workers and try to and think about them, but he looked at the places that he was going to be working, to remember how many facilities that he had in New Orleans at the time.
Is it 4?
Yeah, he had 4 major.
4 of them. And I know people that I have relatives who remember the Higgins factories going on. It was quite a big event in New Orleans.
And what he did was he once again observed everything and tried to make ways to build the boats as efficiently and quickly as he could. And what you see here is a picture of boats being assembled on a canal. So one of his facilities, he assembled boats on a canal. Another one, they assembled the boats on the second floor so they could drop them down to railroad cars. Andrew even covered a city block with canvas roof and used it as a warehouse and a place to work.
And all these were innovative methods at that time.
Oh, yes,
before,
definitely.
he was just inventing new ways to do things. And a lot of people did that during World War II, but Andrew Higgins was particularly and he was able to pull it off, get it done. So
he was, and he got awards. And today there is in the World War II Museum in New Orleans, the National World War II Museum, there is a gold medal that Congress awarded to Andrew Higgins and the workers at Andrew Higgins, the Higgins industry workers, for all of the ships that they produced and the boats, I guess is probably a better word, all the landing boats and the PT boats that they produced during World War II. Next, I want to read to you a page, the words that are on this page. Higgins boats forever changed the way wars were fought. The boats moved countless soldiers and tons of equipment. They landed on sandy shores and rocky coasts. They landed on continents and islands. They landed on beaches from the tropics to the Arctic. Higgins boats were a bridge from ship to shore for hundreds of thousands of brave soldiers. And actually, before we move off of this page, let's just stop for a second. Can you imagine how scary it was for them to go onto a land and knowing that the enemy was waiting on this land?
Right there waiting for them. They had to be very brave, and we are indebted to these men for all they have done for us. And so there's a lot of evidence of superpowers in this time period.
Absolutely. They all have the superpower of bravery. And, bravery is not being, it does not mean that you're not afraid.
That's right.
Bravery means that you do what you have to do or need to do, even though you're afraid. And so that is what we saw that these men did. They moved onto land and freed millions of people that were conquered, freed millions of conquered people. And I'm going to read to you the last page, and it was Stephen Ambrose interviewed President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and President Eisenhower during World War II was a Supreme Allied commander. And I'm going to read to you what we learned from that interview. Years later, President Dwight D. Eisenhower was asked about the war. He talked about Andrew Higgins. He said that the boy from Nebraska who loved boats was the man who won the war.
Pretty powerful.
It's a very big superpower. And that doesn't mean that he did it by himself, but it means that his invention and production of boats allowed the war to move the way it did.
Well, I think with both of the Rose and Andrew Higgins, we see the Rose had a superpower, Andrew Higgins had a superpower, but they were both helped by others with their superpowers. So I think that's true. People don't do it on their own, but we all help each other with superpowers. So let's see what some superpowers are.
Yeah, I guess we put a list up here of some of the superpowers that we thought about. I think we saw perseverance with both the Rose and Andrew Higgins. We saw imagination with Andrew Higgins.
Resilience with the Rose. Endurance.
Empathy.
Andrew Higgins had the empathy with his workers and knowing what they needed. And he had imagination to look at things in the world and put it to use in a boat.
And for sure, we've been showing the superpowers of the talent, which are talents that our two artists had.
Yes. Two amazing artists that we have, as you saw, which we were so happy to be able to feature. We are so fortunate to have them bring the characters and the words to life through their art. It was incredible. But as you see from this list, superpowers are not something like X-ray vision or shape-shifting or leaping over tall buildings. They can be things that we all have. We all have a little bit of some of this maybe, and some people have more of it and they use it at the right time.
Friendship, being a good friend, kindness, being kind to somebody, sports. I mean, all of us see like some of the people in sports who have superpowers, computer skills. The list of superpowers is really just endless.
It is. It is. And it's just looking to see what you have and how you can help others with it. It's something that, again, gives you strength and confidence and helps you do good things in the world. And we saw the Rose did good things in the world, and so did Andrew Higgins. So sometimes all it takes is one person or even a Rose using their superpower to make the world a better place for a lot of people. And that person could be you.
So we hope today that you stop and think about the superpowers that you might have and how they make the world a better place for you and for all the people who are around you. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask us, you can get in touch with us on our website.
Just feel free, and we thank you for listening to us, and hope that you'll read the books and enjoy them.
Yeah, and if you have questions, ask us and we will get back to you. So if you send us an email at info@nancycarrollbooks.com, we'll try to answer your questions.
We would love to do that. Thank you so much.
We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this presentation of the virtual 2021 Louisiana Book Festival. Please visit our official bookseller, Cavalier House Books, and receive 20% off all featured festival titles through the end of the year. A special thank you to our festival sponsors. The Louisiana Book Festival will return on October 29th, 2022.